It's time for Lefties Losing It. Now, here is a rational, considered opinion about geopolitics, about the conflict in the Middle East, delivered in a sober, eloquent manner.
No! 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 Because hundreds of thousands of people are starving! Babies and mothers and grandfathers are starving to death! Because there are thousands of trucks of food and diapers and baby formula behind the f***ing wall! And Israel won't let them in!
I think we all learned something there. Let's move along now to this totally sane and rational lady who just can't understand why those around her are happy with the economy booming, with crime being down, with the border crisis being resolved. Perhaps therapy will help.
Like, am I supposed to go to therapy now? Because I don't understand what I'm supposed to do with all of the anger and the hatred that I feel right now. But I feel like if I go to therapy, all they're going to say is the same, like, do what's in your bubble of control. You can't control. I know this. I know this. I have been trying to control what I can control since 2016. And every effort I put in and everything I do makes no difference. The world and the people around it keep getting worse.
Let's go to the lefty heartland of Portland, where for weeks now Antifa types have been protesting outside an immigration and custom enforcement facility, and it was all fun and games until it wasn't.
Shoot at you. An idea, that's fine with me. While the cops do this, I'll shoot at
Your feelings hurt!
Yep, they got sick of your nonsense, but this has to be the best moment out of Portland in recent weeks and involves the ratbag crowd of lefty agitators outside the ICE facility being told to obey the law, but listen to the voice giving the orders. This is superb.
Restricted area and maybe something to detention or to depart the restricted area. Thank you. This is the Federal Protective Service. The facility is closed and not open to the public. Stay out of the area of the driveway to allow for vehicular traffic. Remain on the sidewalk or across the street. Everyone must leave this restricted area and may be subject to detention or arrest for failing to depart the restricted area. Thank you.
Joining me now is political advisor and commentator CJ Pearson. CJ, let's start with this grovelling, pathetic apology from popular fitness influencer Joey Swole, who copped a backlash from the left for posting something completely normal about Hulk Hogan.
I owe my followers, my community, and all of social media an apology. A few days ago, I reposted an old video of me in the gym wearing a Hulk Hogan Halloween costume on the day that he passed. Last night in my live stream, a lot of people expressed how upset and frustrated they were with me that I had posted that.
CJ, that pitiful apology went on for some time. It's almost a perfect illustration in how not to handle the crazy left.
You know, you're exactly right, Rita. And honestly, thank you. First and foremost, thank you for having me. But I got to say, it's indicative of the fact that everything seems to be swole about him but his backbone, right? But I think it's just more about the left than it does him, because why is this man being canceled for wishing well wishes to someone who just died and their family, right? The fact that the left was actively parading Hulk Hogan's death, an American icon, simply because his politics were different than their own, is despicable, disgusting, but unfortunately part of the course for many of these people. But you know what he will learn, and I imagine he already learned it, is that you can't apologize to these people and expect them to forgive you. You never apologize to the mob, because as soon as you show blood, they're smelling it.
Absolutely. It just emboldens them. And we just saw there that grovelling humiliation ritual didn't work. Joey Swole's now saying that he's quitting the internet altogether, CJ. Tell me, what's your advice to those who find themselves caught up in the left's cancel culture, when they come for you, when they bombard you with messages or bad publicity if you happen to be a business or a public person. What's the best way to handle it?
You know, Rita, I've been fighting on the front line of the conservative movement here in the States since I was 12 years old. And I've gotten plenty of death threats and stripes across my back to show for it. And what I've always said to myself is that at the end of the day, if you're not getting pushed back, you're not pushing hard enough. You know, I love this country, and I think many people do. And if we love this country as much as we say that we do, then we ought to fight for it. But also, too, stand on business. Come on. If you feel as if that you can't say what you want on your own platform, what's the point of having the platform? These people, stop letting the inmates run the asylum.
This is so true. You've got to have a backbone. That's got to be, you've got to have some principles, because then you know if you've actually have done something that's worthy of an apology. When you see people apologising for having done nothing wrong, that's really when you lose all respect for them. But let's stick with cancel culture. The unhinged reaction to Sydney Sweeney's ads for American Eagle are astonishing. Let's have a look at just a little bit.
Hey, you want to go to American Eagle?
Oh, I can't go in there because I'm black.
Those Sydney Sweeney American Eagle ads are weird. Like fascist weird. Like Nazi propaganda weird.
Genes are passed down from parents to offspring, often determining traits like hair color, personality, and even eye color. My genes are blue.
Should we be surprised that a company whose name is literally American Eagle is making fascist propaganda like this? Probably not.
CJ, the meltdown has been huge. We've seen pieces in MSNBC. We've seen hundreds, if not thousands, of outraged clips posted online. How do you see this issue?
I see these people as sick in the head, Rita, to be quite frank with you. You know, I'm not seeing a single attractive person attack Sydney Sweeney for participating in these ads. And I think, you know, that says a lot about what's going on here. Here's the deal. You know, these people aren't upset about, you know, so-called Sydney Sweeney setting women back. They're upset that she's a young, hot, healthy, white, blonde girl who is genuinely feminine. And they despise that. You know, these people who are making all these videos right now, they weren't calling out Dylan Mulvaney when he was erasing biological women and taking part in tampon ads, even though he has no place to put said tampons. They weren't calling out, you know, Leah Thomas when she was, he was going after, the championships of folks like, you know, Riley Gaines. These people don't care about actual women. They care about their feelings. But what I would love to say about this is that this is actually a sign of progress. Before we had to deal with the Dylan Mulvaneys, we had to deal with the Lizzos being heralded as the symbols of body positivity. Now, I think the corporate America knows that we are done with the wokeness. We're done with the woke agenda. And that's exactly why you're seeing folks like Sydney Sweeney given the platform that they're given.
Well, this is really a challenge to the whole body positivity movement, isn't it? Because we saw ads from really major brands which featured people who were morbidly obese, who weren't, you know, considered attractive by, well, any standards really. And you couldn't even be critical of that without being labelled as some sort of hateful fat shamer. But this seems to be just flying in the face of that entire movement.
You know, it exactly is. You know, when I voted for President Trump on November 4, 2024, I knew that I was voting to make America great again. Who knew that I was voting to make America hot again, too? But I got to say, it's a great side benefit. And I think many people are rejoicing in that as well. And I'm glad to see it. You know, the thing is, you know, all these people who are so upset about Sydney Sweeney and what this means for women and what this means for America, they should have been upset about what elevating someone like Lizzo meant for America's cholesterol. But they weren't. And so to be quite frank, I'm not concerned about their opinions about their thing.
But could this backfire for American Eagle, for the brand behind these ads? After all, we do know young women do tend to lean left, and hearing all this talk about white supremacy and Nazis and propaganda, like, could it backfire on the brand?
You know, I don't think so. You know, on November 5th, I think the American people were clear. You know, we wrote the obituary for cancel culture in this country, and I think that we're over the wokeness. You know, in the same way that DEI had to DIE, I think the same thing is going to happen with the woke agenda as it relates to just representation of in this country. And I think that's a win for folks. So I think the people that are upset on TikTok, I think they actually represent the minority. They may be a loud minority, but albeit still a minority all the same.
Well, even celebrities are having a go at these ads. Here's Doja Cat mocking Sydney Sweeney.
Genes are passed down from parents to offspring, often determined in traits like hair color, personality, and even eye color. My genes are blue.
CJ, do you expect to see Sydney Sweeney hit back? From what I've seen, her politics is very much of the left. Could this campaign possibly red pill her?
I think it absolutely will. I don't think you go through something like this, the absurdity of it all, and not think to yourself, should I really align myself with these people and their lunacy and just downright, just mental insanity at this point, right? I thought Trump derangement syndrome was bad, but Sydney Sweeney derangement syndrome may be worse. I don't know. Remains to be seen. But, I think that if she's not thinking about coming over to our side, she certainly is after all of this.
We'll either red pill her or CJ, it will go the other way. She'll come out and try to prove her woke credentials to win back the left. We'll see what happens. Now, let's talk about Diddy, P. Diddy, and this has to be the craziest story of the week. If it's true, it's the dumbest thing the Trump administration will ever do. There are reports, CJ, that Donald Trump is seriously considering pardoning Sean Diddy Combs. CJ, surely not.
I would hope not. If I were in the room with the president advising him on this decision, I would say absolutely not. I think this is an individual who, regardless of the totality of what he was accused of, all of these things, where there's smoke, there is fire. And I don't think that he deserves a pardon from this president. This is someone who actively was an opponent of this president, was very critical of President Trump. And you know what they say, when you win the ball game, everyone wants to be your friend. It's not how that works, right? And so I think if Diddy is guilty of the crimes that he's been accused of, which he was found guilty of certain counts in his trial, then he should actually spend his time in prison and do his time just like any other everyday American would be forced to do.
You're so right about his history, what we already know he's guilty of, what he's been captured on video doing. He's not only a vile, woman-beating miscreant, but he's also been a hard-left, Trump-hating activist as well.
White men like Trump need to be banished. That way of thinking is real dangerous. When you look at it, we don't have no choice.
CJ, P. Diddy was among the Democrats' most effective campaigners. His Vote or Die campaign was considered a huge success, but the Democrats have kind of memory holed that whole phenomenon, haven't they?
They absolutely have, just as they've memory hold, Bill Clinton's ties with Jeffrey Epstein. They don't like to talk about that much anymore. And of course, many of their biggest donors' ties to Epstein as well. Here's my thing. I have no sympathy for P. Diddy. I have no sympathy for anything that he did. But what I do have sympathy for are his victims. And so I think that in light of all of this, no, you don't get to come over to our side and suck up to the president and say, give me a pardon. No, you did the crime. You do the time. I don't care if you're P. Diddy or just a man named Diddy. You do the time, and that's exactly what he should do.
Now, CJ, I want to show you a clip from CNN, possibly the first time CNN asked a hard question of Democrat Nancy Pelosi. She didn't like it.
Nancy Pelosi became rich.
Why do you have to read that? We're here to talk about the 60th anniversary of Medicaid. That's what I agreed to come to talk about.
But I wanted
what that means in the election.
I wanted to give you a chance just to respond. He accused you of insider trading. What's your response to that?
That's ridiculous.
CJ, Pelosi is a stock market genius. The wealth she has accumulated while in public office is something to behold.
It makes even Warren Buffett's mouth water, right? It's interesting to see that, Jake Tapper is finally asking He's probably looking at his ratings and saying, maybe I need to try something and do something a little bit different. But, you know, I welcome, of course, legislation that was recently passed out of committee that will actually ban, you know, members of Congress from owning and selling stocks while they're in office. These people shouldn't be able to engage and act based on the information that they have that no other American has to enrich themselves. There's no reason that someone should go into Congress, make $174,000, but yet leave a multimillionaire. And so I think that this is a welcome, you know, step forward. And I hope that this ultimately passes and is signed into law.
Well, I think that's why public trust in politicians has been so low, because you see that in the US. You see these people going into politics with no asset base, and then after a lifetime in politics, decades, they walk away enormously rich. And you look at the salary they're earning and their wealth at the end of their political career, and it does not make sense. Now, Kamala Harris, we have to talk about her, the former vice president. She announced earlier today that she will not run for California governor in 2026. CJ, we know what this means, as she wants to run for president again.
And I hope that she does, Rita. You know, looking at the decision, she actually may be a little bit smarter than I thought she was initially, but maybe not if she's still weighing a presidential run in 2028. I think the American people will do exactly what they did in 2024, reject her resoundingly, because her problems will still remain the same. She will continue to be inauthentic. She will continue to change her accents with the wind, and she will continue to fail to resonate with the American people and to meet them where they are. And so if I could envision any type of rematch, it would be between Kamala Harris and JD Vance, and it's because I know that JD Vance will absolutely wipe the floor with her.
That would be brutal. Can you imagine Kamala v. JD? That would be, even I would feel sorry for her, because she was, CJ, such a uniquely terrible candidate, wasn't she? She outspent Donald Trump enormously. She spent $1.5 billion in 15 weeks. And still managed to lose every swing state, lose the popular vote, lose the Electoral College in a landslide. If she runs again, I think it's going to be happy days for the Republicans. CJ Pearson, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thanks for having me.
The economic data continues to be good for the US, good for the Trump administration, with the latest GDP figures coming in above expectations.
The GDP price index was only 2%, and the expectation was 2.2. In other words, we have an economy growing at, what do you say, 3%? We have inflation at 2%. That's the best of both worlds.
Joining me now is the president of the Centre of the American Experiment and the founder of the popular Powerline blog, John Hinderaker. John, the data is all positive for now, very different to what we were told would happen with all the doomsday predictions we had not too long ago about Trump's tariffs crashing the stock market, the job market, causing a recession.
Yeah, those predictions have not come true, Rita, and there is no reason to think that they are going to. You know, some of these commentators like to talk as if tariffs are a brand new thing. And until Trump came along, we lived in a world of perfect free trade. But of course, that's not true. There have always been tariffs, there have always been other trade barriers. And what Trump is trying to do is to negotiate better deals for the United States, a more level playing field. And in the long run, that can only be good for our economy. I would add too, Rita, that as part of these trade deals, other countries are committing to invest hundreds of billions of dollars in the United States. And that too can only help our economy.
How much credibility have the expert class lost here, particularly the economists? We saw yesterday figures released showing tariff revenue for July breaking a monthly record. Already we've had $150 billion collected in tariffs. The money's coming in. So far, we're not seeing inflation going crazy. We're seeing decent growth. How could the expert class get it so spectacularly wrong?
Well, they always do, Rita, when they're talking about Donald Trump. Isn't that right? I mean, we've seen prediction after prediction fail. But to be fair, you can get any opinion you want from some economist, right? Economists disagree about just about everything. So the question is, which economists do certain newspapers and certain television outlets want to quote? But the ones that have been predicting doom certainly are looking very bad.
Well, President Trump's announced a relatively high tariff rate of 25% on India. This surprised a few people. We know Donald Trump and Prime Minister Modi are very friendly, and the president did acknowledge India was a friend, but he explained he was imposing an additional penalty on the country because it purchases the majority of its military equipment from Russia. John, that's a very principled position to be taking, again, there from the president, and it's a notice to other countries looking to do deals with the US. It's not just a deal with the US, it's your other trade relationships that are going to determine what rate you end up with.
This is really interesting, Rita, and it illustrates the fact that Trump likes to use trade as an instrument more generally of foreign policy. So one of the things he's trying to do is to isolate Russia and isolate China. But what's going on here is that when a country buys its military supplies from another bigger, more heavily armed country, there's a tendency for it to align itself with that country. That creates relationships between your military and that country's military. And Trump doesn't like that. Trump wants the business here in the US, of course, but I think more importantly, he wants India firmly aligned with the United States in our camp. And I think that's really what's going on here.
Now, the last week has been enormous in foreign policy and in trade deals. We saw the massive deal with Japan, then the EU deal, which again shocked so many people. It seemed to just be win after win for the US. Is this Trump's best week of his second term?
He's had several good ones, Rita, but it's got to be a contender. I mean, that EU deal was stunning. Here in America, the press is kind of mocking Trump. He's going to Scotland to go golfing. Well, he walks away with this incredible trade deal with the European Union. I mean, it's a fantastic deal. And yeah, he's having a very good week. There's no doubt about it.
Now, this economic news isn't going to please Donald Trump, the White House. Earlier today, the Federal Reserve decided to keep its benchmark interest rate unchanged. John, Jerome Powell is proving to be a thorn on the side of this administration. How do you see that relationship going forward?
Well, it's interesting, Rita, because two members of the Open Market Committee dissented and voted against the chairman here. That's the first time that has happened since 1993. Wow. So what Powell is doing is definitely controversial. You know, he says he's concerned about inflation, especially he's worried that the tariffs might create inflation. You know, that's just wrong. Tariffs cannot cause inflation. They don't increase the money supply. You'll see selective increases in the prices of certain products. That'll depress the demand for those products to some extent, and some consumers will choose to buy other products instead. That is not inflation. And so it's hard to avoid the feeling that Powell is really trying to be a thorn in Trump's side, but I don't think it's going to last. I think before the end of the year, we're going to see the Fed cutting interest rates.
Now, before you go, we've heard that White House envoy Steve Witkoff is off to Israel. This is the first trip in almost 3 months for him. One US official told Axios the president wants to know more about what the humanitarian situation in Gaza is in order to know how to get more assistance to civilians in Gaza. John, how significant is this trip and what assurances will Witkoff be seeking?
Well, first of all, Donald Trump is a staunch ally of Israel, and that has not changed. I think what's going on here is that Witkoff wants to check out the situation in Gaza, where there's talk about starvation and so on, investigate it. And I think he's going to come back and report that the problem is being caused by Hamas. Hamas keeps shooting people who are trying to distribute food or trying to receive food. That's the problem, and I think that's what he is going to report to President Trump.
So you don't see any fracturing of that relationship between America and Israel?
I'm pretty sure not, Rita. I mean, Donald Trump is a solid ally of Israel. Mike Huckabee, the ambassador, was quoted on that earlier today. He said there is no daylight, there is no change in the relationship. It remains as strong as ever.
John Heinderrecker, we always love having you on this program. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you, Rita.